Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Louisville. We're in the finals. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Jacob Van Lunen. Jon Stern on the left. No Elvish Mystic turn one. That seems pretty important in this matchup. Brian Braun-Duin, he's playing mono black. His deck's a little slow out of the gates, takes some damage to itself, but then can gain it all back and just bury you in card advantage and removal and a bunch of sweet spells. Turn 2 Colonian Tusker here for Jon Stern. How does that fare?
It's pretty good. He wants to be aggressive, but without a one-drop to protect that, it could just be Devour Fleshed or killed by any number of Brian's 2-mana removal spells.
Yeah, there's one right now. And a post-combat Sylvan Caryatid. Let's see what BBD comes up with here on his turn. Looks like he's going to go for an Underworld Connections. No, it's not Underworld Connections. It is a Night Veil Spectre.
And that's a great play right there. It's going to force Jon Stern to either play a removal spell or to have BBD start taking away at the top of his library. And if he hits lands, that's going to be really good for him. And if he can hit lands and then spells, then it's going to be almost impossible for Jon to win. So he has to go ahead and use that Mizzium
Looks like
Mortars.
Jon agreed with you on that one and said, I can't let that happen. Mizzium Mortars, no land drop, take down the Spectre. And now, I mean, potentially the blood's in the water here. Let's see if Brian Braun-Duin can really start applying big pressure. Well, he can and he can't. Landing in Erebos is fine, but it doesn't actually do anything as far as the clock goes immediately.
Definitely not, but it's nice to just have it on the table in general, because when he's able to get to 5 Devotion, that's going to be a brick wall that only the dragons from Jon's deck will be able to pass through.
Okay.
Now, something interesting here is Brian Braun-Duin, the one thing he was worried about was Jon coming out of the gate too fast, and here he is playing his 5th land, and he's at 20 life.
He's at 20 life. His opponent's on 2 lands and a Caryatid, and now he's got a Pack Rat. His opponent, Jon Stern, though, does play a Boon Satyr here. Draws a Mountain for the turn, so things could start turning around for him. But, you know, Brian Braun-Duin carefully playing his Pack Rat such that he's made sure to leave the mana available to make a copy of the Pack Rat here, even if this one were to get hit by a removal spell.
And Brian Braun-Duin can chain Pack Rats virtually forever here, and without even going down on cards, because he can just use the Erebos to pay 2 mana, draw an extra card, and then he can pay 3 mana and just discard that card and make another Pack Rat. So he can aggressively trade these Pack Rats even with 2 toughness things like Boon Satyr.
And since he's under not a lot of pressure here,
he's probably just going to take the hit for 4 at this point and then make another Pack Rat. And then his Pack Rats are going to be 3/3s whenever he activates a Mutavault, or, I mean, he can activate multiple Mutavaults and then...
Yep, you're right. He just took
hand.
it here. Another thing to keep an eye on is that, remember, the Pack Rat tokens aren't just generic rats. They're actual copies of Pack Rat, meaning that they will increase the devotion count for Brian Braun-Duin, meaning that Erebos could come online pretty quickly here, too. Now, this is a post-combat Xenagos. Is he going to make a Satyr here?
I imagine he will, but...
So what was the deal with the post-combat here? He wasn't going to attack with a Satyr anyway?
Yeah, because if he attacks with a Satyr, then Brian Braun-Duin can just activate both of his Mutavaults, and then his Pack Rat becomes a 3/3, and he can just block and eat the Satyr anyway.
Ah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Good call, Jake. So Satyr sitting back on defense, but we do have a rat. Now, I'll note that even though that looks like a generic rat token, remember that it's not. It is a copy of Pack Rat.
Correct.
In token form.
Yeah, now he can send both of these Pack Rats at Xenagos, and even if a Satyr blocks one of these Pack Rats, Brian Braun-Duin can simply activate one of his Mutavaults, and then both Pack Rats will become 3/3s, and the Xenagos will die, and the Satyr will get eaten. So
or he can even just make another rat.
Yes, that's true.
So he's got multiple options along those lines. He's going to go all in on Pack Rat here. Underworld Connections and Doomblade hit the bin.
I like that play a lot. He has 3 Mutavaults in play.
He has 3 Mutavaults, which all will act as rats and pump up the Pack Rats more. It also means that Erebos is now live, and in they come. So those are 4/4 Pack Rats and 5/7 Erebos. Didn't quite see exactly what if he's attacking any of those at Xenagos, or if they're all just going to hit Jon Stern. But it looks like some amount of them hit Jon Stern, and some of them, and at least a couple of them hit Xenagos there.
Yeah, I imagine he attacked 2 rats at Xenagos, and Erebos at Jon Stern.
It looks like it. Jon Stern's at 18 now. He had jumped up above 20 briefly because of Devour Flesh earlier in the game, but he's back down below 20 now. Brian Braun-Duin sitting at a pretty comfy 16 life with a huge board state. No hand, but he doesn't need one currently.
No, he does not. If he draws a land here, he could actually play the land instead of making it into a rat, then pay 2 mana to activate his Erebos God of the Dead, drawing another card, then turn that card into a rat, and then activate a Mutavault and attack.
Jeez. Here's another Xenagos. And it's going to actually make mana this time, and that's going to make a Polukranos. Now, what does that do here?
Well, actually, the fact that he has Xenagos in conjunction with Polukranos means that he might actually be able to take down these rats. It doesn't look like he's going to have enough mana this game, but in some situations, even when your opponent has 3 or 4 rats in play,
yes,
you can use Polukranos and target 1 for 5 damage, 1 for 4 damage, 1 for 3 damage, 1 for 2 damage, and then they're just like 3 blind mice. You hit one and they fall down like dominoes. It's pretty fun to watch when you're playing the
3 blind mice, he says.
Yeah, when you're playing the Nykthos green deck, it's a fun thing to do against pack rats.
Now, unfortunately for him, he's facing down triple Mutavault as well.
Yes.
So that's going to make that pretty ridiculously hard to do.
Yeah, at this point, these pack rats have the potential to be absurdly large at will.
That's right. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he just starts ignoring Xenagos at some point here and just attacking everybody right at Jon Stern.
He just pointed directly at Jon.
Did he? Okay.
Yes.
So here we go. Attack you. Jon Stern's going to be aware, though, of the Mutavault interaction here. He did not, though, activate a Mutavault and attack with it. So those are just sort of sitting back ready to pump these rats by becoming rats themselves.
Yeah, each of those Mutavaults represents a rat anthem,
right,
if you will.
Yes. And the cool part, one of the many really cool things about a Mutavault is that you can tap it for its colorless mana and then use that mana to activate it. It's not attacking anyway, so it's tapped, but whatever. It's a tapped creature. No big deal. And like you mentioned, it becomes a rat anthem.
Yes. So here you can tap all 3 Mutavaults, make them all into rats, then tap all 3 swamps, discard his last card, make another pack rat token, and then once he does that, his pack rats are all 8/8s.
Wow.
Actual force of nature rats.
So we're looking at Jon essentially must block 2.
Yes.
And even if he does that, he could take 16 and go to 2 here.
Yes.
Pretty insane. And remember,
Well,
Brian
actually, he'd
Braun-Duin
be taking
has
21 because Erebos is also attacking.
Oh, sure, of course, Erebos.
Yes.
So that's not an option. So he's going to have to chump block with his whole team here.
Yeah, so he's going to have to throw his whole team away if he wants to survive this attack.
And also, Brian Braun-Duin has an unknown card in hand, too. Could be Grey Merchant or something along those lines. So things looking really bad here for Jon Stern on the opening game of the finals here from Grand Prix Louisville. Jon's playing an aggressive green-red deck. This is not the Devotion deck. This is just a beatdown deck, and he's playing against... All right, here we go. Pay 3 black mana. Make a rat. So he's going to discard Nightveil Spectre. So that rat's, of course, going to pump the other rats.
Now the rats are 5/5s.
And does he need to actually activate his Mutavaults at all here?
Yep.
Okay.
So rat's a 6/6. And now it's a 7/7.
He's thinking about leaving it back. If he does this one, he'll just do both, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's
so
what he does.
8/8 rats. And Jon going to fall down to 10 here.
From taking 1 hit. And remember, Brian gets to keep all of those rats. Those were all chump blocks. Yes, you just saw Polukranos chump block. Just jump in front.
Polukranos is chump blocking a rat.
Indeed.
That's what it's come to.
That's what we've come to here in Standard. But I expect to see a scoop here. Yep, land scoop. And that's going to put Brian Braun-Duin 1 game away from being a Grand Prix champion here in Louisville. We're going to go to our sideboard plans. And Jon Stern, kind of a clunky draw, right? The first thing to look for when you watch Jon's deck go is, does he have the turn 1 Elvish Mystic? If he does, things can get out of hand really, really quickly. If he doesn't, look, he's still playing powerful spells. It's just they're coming in a lot slower than he'd like.
Yeah, Brian's got to be really happy winning one on the trot. He was on the draw here. The major weakness his deck has is getting run over in the early turns of the game. But his opponent didn't have a 1-drop. His opponent's second turn play was answered with a Devour Flesh, and Brian was able to make it all the way up to 5 lands before taking any damage from his opponent. And at that point, when his opponent attacked him with a Boon Satyr, he was happy to take the hit and just let his Pack Rats snowball out of control. With a triple Mutavault draw and Pack Rats, it's going to be really hard to lose to a red-green deck when your guys just get insane amounts of power and toughness.
That's right.
They can't kill things directly. They have to kill them with damage or with their own power and toughness. And a Pack Rat is going to be very difficult to deal with when it's combined with 3 Mutavaults.
Now, post-board here, we should expect to see Jon Stern play the leanest, meanest version of his deck possible, right?
Yes, he wants to get his opponent dead.
Like
and
ASAP.
fast.
Yeah. So we're gonna see hopefully a show from Jon Stern here to show us exactly what his deck can do when turned up to its speediest level.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, Jon Stern has a card that's incredibly strong in this matchup, Plummet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, now, Plummet is a card that when people first talked to me about it this weekend, I was like, yeah, I've played with it in sideboards before. It was fine. But against this mono black deck, Plummet is a very real spell. It deals with Night Veil Spectre, it deals with Desecration Demon. Those are two of the biggest problems.
They really are.
For this green-red deck. I mean, Night Veil Spectre gives the deck 3 Devotion. And, 3 Devotion is a lot for a deck that doesn't play that much spot removal. Like, the green-red deck doesn't play that much spot removal. So 3 Devotion means they're getting dangerously close to having Erebos be turned on as a creature, and then only your dragons do anything anymore. And they have a trillion spot removal spells to deal with your dragons. Plummet just fills a lot of the holes that John had in his deck previous to sideboarding. So I'm interested to see how it works out.
Other interesting considerations for Brian Braun-Duin, he does have Thoughtseizes and Underworld connections. The Thoughtseizes, I'm assuming they're just a necessary evil. He doesn't want to take the 2 damage, but it's probably better just to take that and strip away a key card from John. Or is it? I know that when you're playing against like mono red,
sure.
You usually take out those Thoughtseizes, but how aggressive is John's deck? Does it force people to take out their Thoughtseizes, or do they stay in?
Well, I've seen most people leave their Thoughtseizes in against John thus far this weekend, but that might just be out of habit because people have these sideboarding plans where they leave Thoughtseize in against green-red decks because they're used to playing against green-red Devotion, where Thoughtseize is quite strong. In a matchup like this, I don't know. I think the major issue here for BBD is going to be getting run over, and I don't think Thoughtseize helps solve that issue at all. Maybe if you're on the draw, Thoughtseize can stay in because it gives you the ability to punish your opponent by stripping away their 2 or 3 mana spell that they might ramp into with Elvish Mystic or cast on the second turn. But it's not going to be the best spell for BBD. He really wants his top decks to be live too, because he doesn't just want to get into the situation where he's drawing off the top of his deck looking for that card that kills his opponent's haste creature and he finds himself drawing Thoughtseizes.
Okay. Brian Braun-Duin will be in the control role here, right?
Very much so.
Yeah. Looking to kill all of Jon Stern's creatures, grind out card advantage. Is he going to keep in his Underworld connections?
He has to keep in some number of Underworld connections. Sure, again, you're worried about getting run over, but the way you win these matchups is by drawing more removal than your opponent, or just pack-ratting them, of course. And Underworld connections allows you to do that while also giving you a ton of Devotion.
Okay.
And again, Devotion is important because you're going to drain them for big numbers with Grey Merchant of Asphodel. You're going to make big mana with Nykthos trying to Nyx, and your Erebos is really only answered by your opponent's Stormbreath Dragon.
Okay. Interesting, too, and cool that Underworld connections, I mean, it's optional. I don't think we've seen anybody miss an Underworld connections activation for any circumstance throughout the course of the weekend. But we do have to keep in mind that, if his life total gets that low where it's not worth a card, he can just simply not do it.
Definitely true.
It is
and
not
that's its advantage over Phyrexian Arena. However, its disadvantage over Phyrexian Arena is a little bit large here.
All right, so players are taking a look at their openers. This could be the last game of the tournament. Jon Stern down a game, looking to rattle off 2 in a row, and there it is. We just talked about it. Turn 1 Elvish Mystic. It's a big start for Jon, but there it is, the Thoughtseize. So those are going to stay in, and he sees Sylvan Caryatid, a couple of Domri raids, and some lands. So it looks like we're going to get to see a Domri raid here next
I would
turn.
imagine we will.
Yeah, so even if he takes one of them away, is that what he's going to take here? Does he care about Caryatid much?
I think he just takes a Domri raid.
Right.
Caryatid can blank a Devour Flesh, so if he has one of those in his hand, he might just take the Caryatid. But I mean, Jon doesn't really have any pressure, so if he has the Devour Flesh in hand, he might just want to go ahead and take the Caryatid. But he doesn't.
Right,
or he just does and would still rather be taking a Domri.
Right. All right, so here's Domri raid. Plus, does he draw a creature? He does, and it's a Colonian Tusker. All right, so things looking good in the early turns here for Jon Stern. Hasn't even attacked, and he's got his opponent down to 18. He's also got a Planeswalker and a creature on board, and his opponent hasn't done a ton. Brian Braun-Duin plays a Mutavault and says go.
Oh, wow, and Jon just drew. His draw steps are gangbusters.
What was
tournament.
I didn't see?
Stormbreath Dragon.
A
And his
Stormbreath
Domris
Dragon,
don't
wow.
miss either.
So if he has a land here, he can go Colonian Tusker, Sylvan Caryatid this turn.
Yep.
And it looks like that's what he's going to do, and that's going to set up Stormbreath Dragon next turn. And all the while, Domri raid creeping up. But BBD says, well, I got to stem the bleeding a bit here. Doomblade. Remember, he doesn't know about the Stormbreath Dragon. He's going to Doomblade the Colonian Tusker to keep that pressure off the board. And is BBD missing a land drop? He's thrown his hand on the table, and he's thinking.
I don't think he's missing
He's just
a
planning
land
out
drop.
his turn here.
Yeah, I think he's thinking about whether or not it might be worthwhile to play a second copy of Mutavault here.
Okay. Now, Hero's Downfall is a card we should look out for as well. It could take out a Domri raid. It can also kill a dragon. Sylvan Caryatid
The dragon
doing
is what
good
he's
work.
really worried about.
Yep. All right, there it is. His third swamp. And it's another Domri raid. Good draws here for Jon Stern. It means that he can keep getting value. Does he hit a creature? Not this time. Domri raid 1 away from being at ultimate level. So next turn it would go to 7, and the following turn all those loyalty counters would go away.
Now, do we know if Brian Braun-Duin has a copy of Hero's Downfall in his hand or not?
I do not know. But here's a Stormbreath Dragon, so we're going to find out pretty soon one way or another. There's a Mutavault on the ground, so that's going to keep Elvish Mystic, but Brian Braun-Duin goes immediately to the life pad, so that means no Hero's Downfall here. Second Mutavault. Desecration Demon, though, shields up. That's not too bad. But this is where all these mana creatures,
either,
yep. This is where these mana creatures for Jon Stern start to become really nice because they've kind of used out, they've overstayed their welcome a little, and it's like, kick them out. Tap down that demon. What is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, he's going to ultimate his Stormbreath Dragon, which makes it big enough to just crash right past that demon. 7/7. He's actually just going to fight. All right, so he's going to fight the demon, just get it out of the way. And then he's going to attack. So very assertive play here from Jon Stern. He's got his opponent down to 3. Remember, and Brian Braun-Duin shows him all of the swamps in his hand.
Jon's very good at having his opponents draw lands this weekend.
This
happened to him in the mono black matchup last time we watched it also.
You mentioned this.
Chris Anderson.
You mentioned this before
many swamps in a row.
When we were watching Jon Stern, that this is how he drew it up, right? You said that's just how he drew it up. Well, that game was exactly how he drew it up as well.
Yeah.
This is that sequence and the way that game played out is exactly what he wants his deck to do every single time. And when he built the deck, he has built it to maximize making that happen as consistently as possible.
Yeah, that turn 2 Domri, and even with that Thoughtseize from Brian, he had 2 Domris in his hand, so he was guaranteed to land one on the second turn. Brian able to take 1 Domri out of his hand, still cast one on turn 2, and then the Domri right away snaps a Tusker right off the top of his deck.
It does.
Then next turn, he draws a Stormbreath Dragon, has the mana to cast it already, plus his Domri, snaps another Tusker right off the top of his deck.
Yep.
Brian drawing lands, can't really do much about that, especially on the draw.
Yeah,
He just got run over.
The only ways that Brian can really pressure an early Planeswalker like that are by killing it with Hero's Downfall or maybe getting some Mutavaults into it. But that's about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a whole lot there.
It doesn't really seem like the best plan. And, I mean, here now, Brian on the play, I'm not sure if the Thoughtseizes are still going to remain in his deck on the play. He might have Night Veil Spectre instead. He does know that his opponent has Plummet, but...
he does know that? Oh, he knows about the sideboard. He doesn't know if he's brought it in or not, but he should assume that, right?
Oh, I'm sure he's going to assume that his opponent has brought in the Plummet. But, he can't take out Desecration Demon because it's just too good in the matchup. And, bringing the Night Veil Spectres actually makes his opponent's Plummets work harder and gives his Desecration Demons more value. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Night Veil Spectres came back in and the Thoughtseizes came out.
Okay. Well, we're going to find out shortly who is going to be our champion. It could be Jon Stern of Team Face-to-Face Games, and it could be his second Grand Prix championship in like a year.
Yeah, both standard.
In standard.
Yeah, he won Grand Prix Atlantic City earlier this year playing a interesting Bant Hexproof deck.
He did, yep. Or it could be Brian Braun-Duin.
Aura, it could be.
You mentioned that BBD has really been concentrating on getting to the Pro Tour stage and staying there. He qualified for Pro Tour Theros last weekend. He's qualified now for the next Pro Tour in Valencia. So looks like his goals are starting to come together for him, and adding a Grand Prix trophy really just catapults him up into the forefront there.
Yeah, if BBD could win this, it would be absolutely huge for him. It would be his opportunity to get onto the train. And
the train
he's somebody, the
being
train,
a gold pro?
The train being a gold pro, and I think it could put him in striking range for that. And he's somebody who I strongly feel deserves that title. And this is a beautiful hand for BBD.
I saw a lot of removal, and it's all cheap, so that's good for him. I want to know.
Definitely.
And Jon Stern has kept, so does he have the turn 1 elf? It's tapped. He does. Elvish Mystic there for Jon Stern. So ideal beginnings. And is this thing going to get immediately sacrificed?
It will.
All right. Devour Flesh, target you. Get that Elvish Mystic out of here. So Mystic down. Polukranos off the top here. Both colors for Jon Stern. No 2-drop. No Sylvan Carry added. Nothing. 3 mana. Underworld Connections on my swamp, and ship it back. And you see he's got a little pep in his step there as he slams it on there and sends it back. Let's see now what Jon Stern comes up with. Does he have a Domri raid?
I believe he does.
Okay. So that would be a nice start.
That would be a nice start. However, it would be a Domri raid into an empty board, and Brian does have Mutavault in play. So Brian could just pressure the Domri with Mutavault, and it wouldn't even be that good, because if he could follow the, even if he follows the Domri up with a creature, all Brian needs is any 2-mana removal spell, and then he's home free from that Domri.
All right, so we're looking at a Boon Satyr here instead then?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I would expect to happen.
There it is, Boon Satyr. And this is, Brian Braun-Duin has an opportunity there, but he decides to just wait. No harm in waiting here. We know he's got another Devour Flesh, and it's probably going to fire it off right here.
Yeah. Seems reasonable.
Yep. And here's a Boon Satyr that's going to take the place of the other one. So, it did end up costing him 4 life here, waiting.
It did.
So we'll see if that matters down the line a little bit.
It's interesting, all of this sequencing that's very new, because the standard format, I mean, the how to play your removal against Boon Satyr is not something that we've dealt with a great deal.
That's right.
Up until this point.
Night Veil Spectre now for Brian Braun-Duin. There is Scavenging Ooze for Jon Stern. So we're in that shaky middle ground here, right? Things are not clear yet exactly how this game is going to go. But Jon Stern is going to attack here with his 4-2 Boon Satyr and put a decision to Brian Braun-Duin. He's got multiple options, and the option he chooses is Ultimate Price.
Seems like a pretty good option to me.
I like it. And what does Jon Stern have now?
Looks like he has an opportunity to resolve a Domri, but that would just die to Mutavault. I mean, it might cantrip, it might not. Oh, that's not a bad one.
So there's the Scavenging Ooze he drew for the turn. He's immediately going to pump it up to a 3/3, get rid of that Elvish Mystic, and no land drop, pass a turn back here. So things starting to get a bit shaky here on Jon Stern's side as he's falling behind pretty quickly on the cards and the land drop race. Though Brian Braun-Duin doesn't have a ton of action in his hand. I know he's got a couple of swamps.
Yeah, I mean, he's drawn a few extra cards, but he'll continue drawing extra cards.
He will.
And this Night Veil Spectre will also start doing a little bit of work as it were.
All right, here it is. Attack you, and he hits Scavenging Ooze, so that's not going to come down for a while, if ever.
Well, he could always hit a green source.
Yep.
Certainly not impossible.
And he kind of just does nothing here, passes a turn back. Is that a Reverent Hunter there? What was that?
Oh, I believe that was Arbor Colossus.
Oh, an Arbor Colossus. Okay, even
It was
better.
a great card.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's way off from being able to actually cast it, and he is on the Scavenging Ooze plan here. And he just says, yeah, just take 3.
Yep.
And he's got a Domri raid here. So is he going to Domri raid and go for a fight? There's a huge risk factor there.
Yeah, there's a massive risk factor in just going for a fight right away here. But
so do you think he's just going to try to draw some cards, or, I mean, if he does, he's going to lose his Domri raid to the Mutavault and the Night Veil Spectre, but he's going to do it anyway. Sees a non-creature on top of his deck and just passes a turn back.
And with that being a non-creature on the top of his deck, it's actually pretty likely that it's a green source of mana. So that has to bode well for Brian to some degree. We have to remember that the majority of non-creatures in his deck are green lands.
Mm-hmm.
More than half, even. Somewhat surprising that BBD chose to not use his Hero's Downfall in that spot.
I mean, he does just get to kill Domri here, right?
He does.
Without having to use an actual card, he just activates Mutavault. Not going to get a draw out of the Night Veil Spectre here, but no value for Domri raid there. It does not hit a creature when he pluses it, and it just gets killed the next turn. A little bit of life gain, but you have higher hopes for a Domri raid when you put it in your deck list than that. Jon Stern, now he hits a forest. So are we going to start seeing some Pelucranos, some big stuff start hitting the board here? Let's find out. Start off by attacking for 3 damage. And there's Ultimate Price that's going to hit this Scavenging Ooze. Okay, you got it. Land, Pelucranos. Your move. All right, so yeah. BBD.
It's a big boy.
Yeah, he's still sitting on that Hero's Downfall. Is that what you said you saw him have earlier?
Yes, he is.
Okay, so he's got an answer in hand. And
he just found another one, too.
Okay. Was that another Devour Flesh there?
It was another Devour Flesh.
All right. So here is 3 mana. Wow, for a Lifebane zombie as well. That's going to at least hit an Arbor Colossus, if not something better. Wow.
Wow.
Rurik Thar. It can also take away the Arbor Colossus if he wants. So one or the other.
And that is a stacked hand.
That is a sweet grip, but he's a mana short from quite a bit of it and 2 mana short from a bunch. So, like, pretty tough here. This is going to be a tight one. Rurik Thar is actually what he's going to exile here, though.
I have to agree with that because he's going to be using a lot of life for his Underworld connections at this point.
Oh, okay.
And if his opponent resolves a Rurik Thar and he is at 6 or less life, he'll just find himself dead.
It's just kind of game at that point. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, even though his opponent's like 2 full land drops away from landing that Rurik Thar?
Yeah, I mean, his opponent's at 20.
Okay.
And, there's no sign of his opponent really falling much lower at this point, considering, there's a Devour Flesh that BBD is about to fire off at this Pelucranos.
Target you. Pelucranos down, and that is going to jump Jon Stern back up in life. So just like you said, JVL, life total is not really the issue here for Jon Stern at the moment. He does find a land, so here comes Arbor Colossus. Okay, good. I mean, look, Jon Stern has been playing some sweet stuff here, but he is so far behind because of that Underworld connections Brian Braun-Duin has been able to activate that turn after turn after turn, and you can see the difference on board as a result. All of those lands at his disposal. Still has the same amount of cards in hand that Jon does, and now he's drawing another one and then potentially another one. Draws a Thoughtseize for the turn.
Yeah, Thoughtseize, not the absolute ideal card in this spot, but still not too bad. Is that a Desecration Demon in his hand? Because that would be just about a KO.
All right, 5 damage and reveals a land.
A very nice land.
That one opens up him being able to cast quite a few of the spells from Jon's deck.
Yeah. And I mean, he's about to play Desecration Demon this turn also, I believe, which means that by playing this Desecration Demon, he can, I was just going to Thoughtseize away the Hellkite. I'm sorry, the Stormbreath Dragon, and then cast the Desecration Demon, and now he's in
All right,
an
so
absolutely
I want to do a
dominant
check-in
position.
here, JVL. Things are looking really sweet for BBD right now. Am I wrong?
You are not wrong at all.
Okay, so let's see if he can finish this thing off and become a Grand Prix champion with this mono-black Devotion deck that Todd Anderson designed and that he top-8'd with. Go ahead.
Interestingly, Jon Stern just kept... Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. I thought he just scryed and kept a card on top. He Dom-read and missed.
Okay,
apologies.
No worries. Dom-read and whiffed. So
If he
BBD...
scryed and left something on top, it was blowing my mind. I was like, what stays on top?
I guess
Who's
he
on
figures
first?
it's going to the Spectre or whatever anyway. But all right, so there's still that Mutavault down there. And BBD, Brian Braun-Duin, looking to be a Grand Prix champion here. He's very close. You got to wonder if those palms are getting a little sweaty there as he's looking at the board and he's like, this looks pretty good.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about this right now.
I might win this thing.
Yeah.
All right, he's going to kick things off, though, with an activation of his Underworld Connections, dropping him down to 6. His life total is a bit low, so he does have to be a little careful here as he moves towards closing the door on Jon Stern. Remember, Jon has a ton of creatures with haste, and he doesn't want to get sloppy here. So he's going to take down... He still has a clock here. That's 8. He can still finish off his opponent the next turn anyway and still be able to take down Domri Raid to limit all possible draws. He can absolutely shut the door here and limit Jon Stern to a single solitary draw step here. And that's all that would stand in between Brian Braun-Duin and a trophy. Being extra careful here. I mean, he knows he's in a fantastic position, but this is not the time when you want to get too quick for yourself here.
You don't want to be a fancy pants.
You do not. So he plays another Lifebane zombie, even though his opponent doesn't have a hand. He also plays a Scavenging Ooze. He also plays a land, and he has set up an insane board state here. And it feels like, with only 2 red mana sources on board, that's going to do it. And Brian Braun-Duin is our champion here at Grand Prix Louisville. Mono Black Devotion, a deck designed by Todd Anderson, played by Todd Anderson, also played by Brad Nelson and Brian Braun-Duin, all 3 of them top 8 in the Grand Prix here. You get a look at the road to the finals here.